I'm about to start my newly fitted Aston Martin DB9 engine for the first time, but there's been so much that's gone on in the past couple of weeks to get me up to now that I need to fill you in on. So let's take a trip back down for the past 2 weeks. Let me fill you in on what's happened. It's been a crazy, crazy couple of weeks. Body's been off, that's one hint for you, again. But yeah, sit back and enjoy, and then you'll join me back live and we'll try and start this thing. Ha-ha! And we pick it up where we left off with the body having just been put back on the car. So it's been a long journey, but we are now at such a close point to get starting this car. As you can see, what I've done is I've started laying out bits where they're gonna go. And that's because I like to have a bit of an understanding of where everything's going. Before I sort of commit fully, I wanna make sure that I know where every hose is connecting and where every plug is connecting to as well. Because then once I just get into it, I can just sort of bomb through it really. Well, as you can see, I've got both ECUs out. I've actually just started cleaning one. As you can see, it makes quite a big difference. But obviously, I have done myself a favor, passenger side, driver side, so that makes life easy. They obviously connect into these plugs there. This eventually will route round to the cab. I've just still got it on the zip tie, but it'll go down there, as do the earth cables. Again, I've labeled them up, so I know what's going where. Around this side, it's taken me a bit of time to figure this out, to be honest. And that's because there's just so much to it. Obviously, we've got that harness goes into there. That's fine. It's about all the other hoses we have. We have this hose here. We have a spare, well, we've got an earth cable there. That's another point. And then there is somewhere knocking around, well, this hose here. If I can point at this one here, this sort of silver one, that's not plugged up yet. And then obviously, beyond that, we have all these cables that will need connecting back up to our fuse box. And beyond that, then this hose will go into the bottom of here, which is our coolant overflow tank. This hose eventually connects to a pipe that's halfway down the engine, so I need to run it around there. I've still got this pipe to run around. Thankfully, I have written front on it. That just about can make that out. That, I believe, connects down into this point here. And then obviously it will run around again alongside the engine and plumb up to one of these. Then I do have another one, which will be this piece that will connect up to the other one. And then I just need to figure out what this side's for. I also have the replacement for this broken fuel purge valve, I believe it was called. And that's there, just need to attach the new bracket to it. And beyond that, I've just started routing wires around properly. This wasn't properly fitting down. It was lifted about a couple of inches. I've figured out why that was now. The bracket underneath was just in the wrong place. The air ducts I've swapped around because I realized I plugged them in the wrong way. I then connected them up to the sort of initial air intakes. So they're all done as well. So that's all connected up. I've also done the plugs for them. I've routed these back around the front. These are just the sensors that will go on the bumper. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's just a case of cracking through a list. I've sort of just quickly drawn up a bit of a list just to make sure I don't forget anything. Obviously, there's like fuel lines under the car that are going to need connecting up. Starter is going to need connecting up. And I believe there was an earth to the torque tube, but I'll also need to do. But I'll cut myself off from rambling too much and let's dive into it, starting with the fuel purge valve. This is just held onto the body with 2 nuts. There's then an electrical connection and 2 hoses to fit on. After that, I can then plug the starter cable to the bulkhead as well. Okay, well, next one is going to be tricky on the film, so I'll just show you what I'm doing. We've got 2 fuel lines, one, and there's a second one just up here. They need to be plugged into these, and obviously the one that's lower down goes into the one that's lower. The one that's higher up goes into the higher one. Pretty easy task, but yeah, impossible to do this with a camera up there. And I've also connected this coolant hose that goes to the bottom of the radiator. But as far as I'm aware, that is everything on the front end of the underside of the car done. Everything that needs connecting is connected. So I can now drop this car back down and we can crack on with all the wiring harnesses, the earths, the plumbing of the cooling system at the top, all the fun stuff. And the stuff I know is going to drive me crazy. So I'm starting off on the passenger side, and it's worth advising at this point, I'm not connecting things up properly to the brackets yet. I want to know the engine runs before I spend all the time assembling things correctly. As such, I'm just connecting up all electrical connections and then letting the ECU and fuse box sit naturally. Once I know the car starts, these will be relocated properly back onto the brackets they were initially on, but if the car doesn't run, it's more work I'm giving myself to have to undo again. Okay, fuse box is all wired up, even if it does look messy, it is all connected. It gives little hints what's meant to go next to each other because someone's drawn sort of lines onto the two bits of the connectors. That's the only one that doesn't have one, but the others were all quite self-explanatory as a result. Anyway, I'm just sitting it down there. Obviously, that's not where it's meant to sit. But next up is going to be connecting this to the ECU. And as you can see at the back of it, it's got some earth cables, which if I can find them, you can see I've just put a green mark. Yeah, you see where I've just put a green mark by one of the studs. There's another stud just hidden away. So let me show you that. Which is where the two earth cables you can see in the shot now, they're going to go on the upper stud. And the bottom stud that's in the center of the shot now that you can see is going to be for these. And then once we've got the ECU plugged up, we can then connect the cooling system, which I have subsequently figured out, so that's all good as well. So we can get all that done. Yeah, looking good. So in goes that ECU next, and there's two of these, one on either side, and I marked them up when taking the car apart as driver's side and passenger side to make life easier for myself. With the ECU in, it looks chaotic down there, but you'll have to bear with me on this one. Next up is the coolant reservoir, which was simple enough, then time for the other side. And now let's driver's side done as well. Right, that should now be everything we need plugged up to be able to start this car. I think the only thing that I might have to do is bleed the brakes and get them all connected, but I'll hopefully find that out soon. The battery's been reconditioned in the meantime, so I'm gonna get that plugged back in. We're gonna turn the ignition on, and I'm just gonna see if I can get any pressure in those brakes. If I can't, then I know I've got to bleed them, get them all plugged up. And then once we've got the power, I can get the boot open, which I suspect is probably where the fuel pump relay is going to be, but we'll check that, and yeah, we'll start filling it with oil and coolant. We're getting super close now to trying to start it, and I'm nervous as hell. Okay, battery is on, had some sparks, all good signs. Obviously not going to try and start it, but should hopefully have some life. Nothing on there, which is a bit of a worry. Got some there, but no life on the dash. And here's something going. Or have we got nothing there? Following a bit of investigation, I remembered there were more plugs that needed connecting in the driver's footwell. Once I crawled under there and plugged them in, the Aston dashboard had life again. So at this point, I looked for the fuel pump relay. Well, a nice little touch is that the fuel pump is still disconnected from the last time when I was trying to test the engine for the first time to see if the engine was seized. So that's done. That's the fuel pump relay. It will just go into there once we're ready to actually start the engine. So even if I accidentally crank it or whatever, no fuel's going in, we're going to be okay. It's time to fill the engine with oil, and I'm using what's recommended by Aston Martin. This is 0W40 by Mobil, which was expensive oil, but I was hardly going to get this far and go for a cheaper one. Once the oil was in, I tried to fill the cooling system, but this is where it all started to go terribly wrong. Admittedly, I wasn't expecting any issues filling the cooling system, so I didn't have the camera ready, but as you can see, it was a pretty bad leak. I tried to see where it was coming from, but it was so difficult. With the engine in position, there's so little space to look around. It did seem to be coming from the back of the engine, and my research was concerning me. This seemed to suggest potentially I'd missed a hose, or worse yet, bad head gaskets. I decided to call it there for the day so I could go back and look at some diagrams of the cooling system to see if there was anything I'd missed, and also to reach out to the company I bought the engine from. Okay, so new morning, and as you've just seen, we now have lights on the dash. That's all connected up, that's okay. Now, I'm going to try and crank it because I'm a bit hesitant. I don't think there's enough brake pressure to actually allow me to. So this could be very anticlimactic, just to forewarn you. But even beyond that, I actually don't know if the starter works. So that's another possibility that could be not working, but fuel relay has been removed. So let's just give it a go and let's just see if it will crank, or at least if I can get it to do it. I might have to connect up the brakes and bleed them to be able to do it, but I just want to know first. At the time, I thought this had to be down to having not bled the braking system, so I quickly did this. It was another thing I'd never actually done before on my own to add to a whole list of things I've learned whilst working on this car. And I know it's registering because we've got that. So yeah, actually done something, done a thing, bled some brakes. Actually wasn't too bad, but the key thing is, will it now let us try and crank the engine? Let's see. It does say low power. Let's just see if we can get anything. And still, no joy. I was beginning to think at this point we had a problem with the starter. So, just had a couple minutes to gather my thoughts, and I think it's what I was initially suspecting. It would be just my luck. I think we have a bad starter. There could be a bad earth, but I know I've tightened up all the ones I've plugged in. So I can also check basically to see if there's any bad earths, but I just feel like it's going to be the starter, isn't it? I'm probably going to have a look at how you do the process of just testing them. Test the starter. Ah, God. So I'm literally doing this live time for you guys. So sorry if it's not very fluid, but yeah, I think we got a bad starter, and I think that's why it's not starting. It sounds like it's trying to. It's sort of clicking. It's like you can hear the solenoid going, but this starter's just not turning, and I think that can only be either a bad starter or a bad earth. I can't imagine anything else. So with the starter being pretty hard to access, along with our coolant leak, my options seem limited and the course of action, unfortunately, somewhat obvious. So it is looking like I might have to take the body back off again, or I might be able to do that with the engine in situ. We'll have to see, but it will be, oh God, that just sounds like such a horrible job. Oh, no. No good, guys. Oh, bugger. Could be body back off. Just thinking about it now. It could be body back off to get the heads off and get new ones put on. The thing is, they said they checked it. I'm speaking to the engine company now to qualify whether it was torqued back down, etc., blah, blah, blah. Although actually, if they did check it, it should have been new bolts. So I'm hoping they haven't checked it. So to digress, starter bad, engine pretty bad, I think, as well. I feel like I'm just staring down the barrel of a lot more work taking the body off. I feel like I'll be able to do it quite quickly this time. That's the good thing. And to be honest, at the end of the day, if this had gone smoothly, well, it almost wouldn't have been believable. I'm a part-timer, I'm just learning how to make all this work. So yeah, realistically, odds on, it probably wasn't gonna go right the first time. But I promise you now, we will get there. This car will run, and it will run fantastically well. I actually briefly tried to fight the idea that the body had to come off by stripping down one side of the engine. I wanted to see if the bolts were loose or not. The inlet manifolds are a nightmare to get off, and it's fair to say I wasn't too graceful in my methods either. I can laugh at it now, but at the time, this car was beginning to beat me up mentally. Taking these steps in the wrong direction just seemed so demoralizing, but I was not going to give it up that easily. It didn't take too long, though, for me to realize this was all completely pointless with the body on, so I stopped. Well, I feel a bit defeated. I've basically just come to the realization that body is going to have to come back off, which is so annoying. I've done so much in terms of just trying to get that all lined up. Such a pain in the ass. Gonna have to, all the electrical connections I've done, I'm gonna have to undo those. I'm gonna have to undo a lot of these hoses, air boxes, earth cables, starter cable. Should only have to take off one bit of that. But yeah, basically a lot's gonna have to come off. Go back to where we were, properly investigate this engine. Oh, it's gonna be so much work. Just because of this coolant leak. Fuming. And well, actually just having the thought now, you've seen me take this body off before, and just to try and be a bit quicker, because it's gonna take quite a bit of work, I'm just gonna skip through this. So, one car. Voila. Okay, now that actually wasn't too bad. It took just over 2 hours, but yeah, I was working flat out at it. What I've done is I've plugged up our cooling system again, because in theory, but I should still be able to try and fill it until it gets to the same point when it leaks. Now we've got the body off, I should be able to get a proper look as to where the leak's coming from, whether it's from a hose or whether it's from the heads. Now, like I say, the engine, the company that I bought the engine from, they're adamant they haven't touched the heads or the header bolts. So it could well be a bad pipe, but looking down here, there's water all the way along here. Now that could have just drained along because I filled up quite a few times trying to see if I could find the leak. But yeah, I think I should be able to plumb this up, fill it with water until eventually we'll hear it all pouring out. That's my thinking anyway. This was tough seeing the car back like this again, but at least taking the body off was a lot quicker the second time around. I started to fill up the cooling system again, listening out for that inevitable leak of water, and to my surprise, it seemed to be coming from the front of the engine. Well, there you go. Just leaking out there. Leaking out both? Oh dear. Well, there's our answer, plain and simply. Not a bad hose. Yeah, so it's leaking out there and running down here because the engine's on a slight tilt. And then down here. Okay. After pouring in a bit more water though, I stumbled on the issue. It's definitely leaking out of there. Oh, I wonder if it's leaking out of this thermostat. Ah, maybe. And well, you can probably see the issue here before I figured it out. Those bolts don't look very tight to me. That might be my next port of call, guys. There's this thermostat housing. Right, I've just had a thought. I was missing the bolt here, so it might not have sealed in properly. And the gasket might actually be okay. I do know this is broken, by the way. I caught that on the inlet manifold, but I've got another one, so that's not a problem. But I'm going to see if this will hold in. We need to reconnect this back up. I've only just realized as I've been taking it apart, I'm missing the bolt at the back. And that would make sense if it is leaking. So yeah, I'm going to quickly bolt this back up again, put the hose on the other side and try and refill it. All right, well, good news. I think that's quite a quick fix. I've put a whole load in. It's actually holding in the bottle now. There is actually another tube that it is leaking from, but that's only because it's one of these cables. So it's for this tube here that's meant to feed around into here, and it's just completely left bare. But we were leaking from here before then anyway, and we're not anymore. So I don't think we got bad gaskets. I think this one's on me. This is user error. I think I've just not fit it properly. I've not bolted it down, and now we got it bolted down. It's sealing tight. So we've gone from me worrying about paying 700 quid to then paying 16 to paying nothing. I'll get that order cancelled with Scooter. But yeah, what a result. I mean, we got the body off now. Obviously, it's going to make doing the starter easier anyway. And it actually only took me a couple hours, or just over a couple hours, to take the body back off. So I think this has been a good day. I think we've sorted out our issue. I'm honestly just so relieved about that we have. Sorted out our issue. We just got the starter to do. Before I put a new starter in, I'm going to test it, make sure it's working. And then I guess I want to test the old starter when it comes out, make sure that's definitely dud. If it was dud and the new one's good, then I think we'll be good to go. In any other outcome, I don't know where we go from there. But yeah, good result today. Glad we fixed the issue with this coolant. Did mean having to take the body off, but Apparently I'm used to that now. I've done it twice now, which is probably more than even a lot of Aston Martin mechanics, I imagine. Very good. So one issue fixed. The next day, I just had to tackle our starter problem. First up, that starter is absolutely fine. I took it round, I couldn't figure out how to do it on my own, so I took it around to my friends at Allwoods. They helped me do a bench test on it, and yeah, it's working, no problem at all. So it was actually an issue with my wiring, and then I was just having a look around. Obviously, whilst the body's off, this is the easiest time to do it. I refitted it all, connected it all back up, checked against the workshop manual to make sure I had the right leads on the right terminals, etc., etc. And then I found one thing, and that was this earth cable wasn't attached to anything. It was just hanging freely. And if you follow it, it sort of leads back into sort of like the engine harness or into the starter. So what I've done is I've just bolted it in now. So we actually have an earth. And obviously without an earth, well, we wouldn't be able to get the starter running properly when the car was all connected up. So I'm quietly confident we should be able to get it this time around. But yeah, cooling system is no longer leaking, and starter we know is working, so that's fine. And I think we solved the issue with why it wouldn't let me why the button wouldn't illuminate red for me to be able to try and start the car. So I'm a bit more confident now. And yeah, everything's basically there. Just these back suspension springs. I just need to move out the way and just hold them out the way, maybe with some tape or something. But other than that, we're ready to drop again. And another thing to tell you guys about is I actually forgot to disconnect this brake line, but it's fine because it was actually leaking from here. As you can see all this rubbish up here. So when I came back the day after, underneath the pallet now was just a whole load of brake fluid. So it needed replacing. I have got a new one on order. I've just got to wait for it to arrive, and then it will just connect into here. Obviously I'll just take this one off. And then, yeah, I have to do that obviously to get brake pressure to be able to get the ignition button to like red. So yeah, I'll be able to get the body back on, but I won't be able to start it yet. I'll just actually have to get this brake line replaced first. Similar to taking the body off, you've seen me do this before, so I opted to skip through this. We all want to know really whether this engine actually starts, don't we? I certainly did. Right, well, I've actually just had a thought. As I'm in the process of lowering the body, as you can see, the clearance is a lot lower now. I've just figured out that I could actually drop this just down low enough to be able to get this in now. This is the manual, I think it's the park override, so the manual override to get it out of park, so if you need to put it into neutral. I think I'm going to get this plugged up now because I remember this was going to be an absolute pain otherwise. So I'm just going to drop it down. As you can see, I just need another few inches and then I'll get this in first. And that's just reminding me, I have actually done like the heat shields as well this time around. As you can see, that's bolted up into the torque tube. So yeah, I think we're looking a lot better this time. So with the park override connected up, let's jump forward to the body back on. Okay, and you've seen me do it before, so I just thought I'd just crack on and just put the body on. But everything is lined up. I mean, to be honest, it was actually a lot easier the second time around. But yeah, we got all our chassis bolts in, managed to get them all tightened down as well. There's some underneath that I'll have to get at in a bit. All the suspension bits are done. Now, I haven't been able to do this yet. Funny story with that. I thought because there was a bracket in the trunk, I thought, you know what I'll do is I'll put some glue on it just to hold it in place, and then I'll put the bolts on the top. Turns out that the bolts I am referring to are brackets. They don't just screw on, these sort of latch around the corner, so it doesn't actually work to do that. I thought it was just going to be this sort of little hex head and I'll just be able to tap it on, but no, I can't do that, annoyingly. So I need to get some acetone and just rub it in, and because it's a bit stiff now obviously with the glue, and then I need to get it lined up and put it through there. I've started putting these bolts underneath in line, but once I get it right up in the air, I'll get the other 3 bolts in. As you can see, I've just missed a couple out. I just noticed when I was putting it on that it all sort of held together with those bolts, and I figured it would be a lot easier on being on my back, lying down, trying to do it. I'll lift it up and I'll just do it in the air. But yeah, that was quite easy. I say easy, less stressful this time. But yeah, 2 hours later or whatever, we got the body back on, so job's good. All right, these bolts are now also done. Wasn't fun, cut myself pretty badly doing it. But yeah, anyway, they are, in fact, done. I basically used the crowbar to keep some weight on the bracket, and that way I was able to then bolt it from the top. So that's in, and that's in. I then also lifted up the car and bolted up the remainder of the chassis to body bolts underneath. All right, well, we're about another couple hours later or so. It's getting late. I'm about to call it for the night, but we're basically back to where we were when I realized that we had the coolant leak last time. So I just need to fill up some coolant. I then have to wait for this brake line to arrive at the back of the car and then bleed the brakes. I also noticed that we had a leak from the front left brake line, so I ordered a new brake line as well. After this, I topped up the cooling system to check the leak had definitely gone. It's filling up. Look at that. We have a coolant and it's holding absolutely fine. So the cooling system was definitely holding water and I just had to wait for our brake hose and brake line to arrive. But now you're up to speed. I've got a brake line and a brake hose to fit, and then we're gonna bleed the brakes so we can get some pressure to be able to try and start the car. We need some brake pressure. You need to push the brake pedal down for the start button to illuminate red. So let's jump into it. First up, in goes the new brake line. Next up, in goes the new brake hose. I then bled the brakes and it was showtime. It all boiled down to this. Would the car start? So as you've just seen, brakes are now bled. I've topped it up with a bit of oil. We're good to go. So just connect the battery up and let's try it. Okay, battery is connected, guys. It's oh, I got a red button. This is exciting. Just check these are all good. So I got the oil light on. I'm gonna hold the accelerator down. I do have the fuel pump relay removed, but just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna hold that in. Okay, foot in. Oh, it's actually cranking. See if we can get some oil pressure. And the first signs seemed promising, so I quickly plugged in the fuel pump relay. Alrighty, fuel pump relay is connected. I'm gonna keep my foot on the accelerator for now and just keep trying to get the oil circulating, hopefully. Sounds good. All right, guys. I think we're gonna send it. Help me. Oh, it tried. Well, oh God. Let's give it another go. Keep running, keep running. Come on, baby. Yeah! Come on! And guys, the car actually started, and once it built up some fuel pressure, it seemed to be running perfectly. She's running! Look at this! Oh my God! Come on! Yes! Let me just check everything's alright inside. Oil light's out now, so that's good. We got oil pressure. Now, obviously, I need to break this engine in before I can properly rev it, but I couldn't resist a very slight tether of the throttle pedal to, you know, check it worked. Getting a bit fumey. Oh my God, we have a running engine. Let's just check. No oil leaks or anything. Por favor. Hey, that's all my brake fluid on the right from bleeding it. We're dry, guys. We're completely dry. Oh my God, guys, I'm trying to summarize this for you, but I'm pretty speechless. It's a few months of work and that engine sounded crisp. Oh my God, I can't believe I've actually done that. I didn't even know how to bench test a starter with bleed brakes, and I swapped a V12 engine. You gotta laugh, you gotta laugh. Oh my God. Guys, what a way to finish the video. I really hope you've enjoyed this. Hit that thumbs up button for the sound of that V12 engine roaring into life. Subscribe if you're new. We got to get this thing MOT ready. Oh my God, I'm so stoked. Oh my goodness. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Let's keep it going. Come on. Come on. See you next time. Bye-bye.